I want to start off by reading this press release that was released by the district attorney, Kings County. This just so that everybody gets an overview of what you've been charged with, what they claim. So we'll get their side, and then we're going to get your side as we talk. We're going to hear from you.
Absolutely.
So this press release, numerous weapons, both completed and unfinished, recovered from defendant's apartment, including 4 assault weapons, 5 handguns, and 4 rifles. Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez today announced, and this was back in April 22nd of 22. So this was almost 2 years ago. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez today announced the indictment of a Brooklyn man who allegedly purchased over $10,000 worth of gun parts online to build illegal, untraceable firearms known as ghost guns. Numerous completed guns and gun parts were allegedly recovered from his apartment. District Attorney Gonzalez said this defendant allegedly acquired a massive arsenal of homemade ghost guns that are as real and dangerous as traditional firearms by assembling guns from kits, unfinished parts, or 3D printed components. Those who possess ghost guns evade critically important background checks and registration requirements, and because they have no serial number, they are untraceable. The surge in ghost guns in our neighborhoods is a major contributor to the violence plaguing our communities, and my office is working tirelessly to stop the proliferation in Brooklyn. The district attorney identified the defendant as Dexter Taylor of Bushwick. He was arraigned today before Brooklyn Supreme Court Justice Phyllis Chu on a 37-count indictment in which she is charged with multiple counts of second, third, and fourth degree criminal possession of a weapon, criminal possession of a firearm, prohibition on unfinished frames or receivers, and 1 count of unlawful possession of pistol ammunition. His bail was continued at $50,000, and he was ordered to return to court on May 5th, 2022. The district attorney said that following an investigation, members of the New York City Police Department identified Taylor as having ordered numerous ghost gun kits and component parts from various online retailers that were allegedly shipped to the defendant's address on Eldert Street in Bushwick, Brooklyn. A search warrant was executed at the defendant's apartment on April 6th, 2022, and numerous items were recovered, including 4 completed assault weapons, 5 completed handguns, 4 completed rifles, 8 lower receivers for rifles, 5 lower receivers for handguns, 4 rifle magazines, 7 pistol magazines, 4 upper receivers, casings, bullet primers, and gunpowder to build ammunition, and various tools commonly used to build firearms. Okay, Dexter.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds really bad, but I want to start off by asking you.
Why does it sound bad?
Why does it sound bad, right? So this is their framing of this, right. And then I'm going to ask you about this, and I want to get into your background of who you are.
Sure.
Actually, let's start with the background of who you are, and then I'm going to go into something that they said in this press release that I think is one of the more important parts of this story, if not the most important part of this story.
Sure.
That I think. Well, anyway, so just tell us. Who are you?
Sure.
You've never committed a crime, so you have a squeaky clean record.
Squeaky clean, that's correct.
You tell us about your hobbies, who you are, your background, your education.
Sure. I am a kind of lifelong, well, first of all, I grew up as a working class kid, right? I grew up in a union household. My dad worked heavy construction. My mom was a registered nurse. They're both retired. Lifelong New Yorker, except for 7 years I spent in Baltimore City. I'm a software developer. I've got 30 years in the industry, and I still write code every day. I started back I taught myself to write C++ code in the early 90s, and then I got my first job in the industry in 1994.
Where did you go to high school?
New York. I went to high school at Stuyvesant High School.
Okay, so you went to Stuyvesant. Okay.
Yeah.
One time I said that wrong on air, and everybody made fun of me. I called it Stuyvesant.
Oh my God, no.
Because I'd never heard of the school before. But it's a school for smart kids. I mean, this is where like smart kids go to school. That's why it made the news, because it was this elite school, and recently they found that it was majority Asians were getting into it or something, so it was like kind of had like a scandal attached to it in that way.
Well, I mean that was racist Bill de Blasio, who seemed to think that there's too many Asians in Stuyvesant. Well, I happen to think that, well, like if they make the grade, they get in. That's
right.
The least racist thing there is. So, but that's another story.
Okay, right.
Degenerate progressives and their nonsense, we'll leave that to one side.
Sure.
But anyway,
so you went to this school. You've always been interested in science, tech, building things.
I've always been a nerdy kid. I've always been a kind of a tech geek. And that's persisted. I got into software. I started as a software developer, but I also started as like a hardware guy. I was building my own computers back when I used to live in downtown Brooklyn. My apartment was basically like a network lab. I had my own. I was running my own mail server at one point. Building my own machines, that kind of thing, building networks. So I've always loved doing that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
I built my first recording studio in 1999. And yeah, I've just always been fascinated with, and of course, as a red-blooded American kid, I was always fascinated with guns, with weapons, with fighter planes and tanks and so on and so forth. I'm a licensed amateur radio operator, call sign KD2LOM, technician class. I make my own furniture. I have a machine shop in my basement where I make things other than weapons.
Okay.
Um, and to fast forward to a few years ago, I became fascinated with weapons, with specifically with the so-called ghost guns. I prefer the term traditional guns, but you know, to each his own.
Right.
Uh, I found out that there were people who were actually buying legal parts online and machining receivers to completion, and then adding trigger groups and so on and so forth, and coming up with completed weapons. And I was hooked. I was fascinated. I thought that was just the coolest thing you could possibly do, the most traditional thing you could possibly do, making your own firearms. So I started with Glock style pistols. I made like, I don't know, 6 or 7 of those. And then I started with making AR style rifles, and I made a couple of bolt actions, and the rest were all traditional semi-auto
Okay.
AR style rifles. And all of these rifles I made for myself, right, for me. I became interested in weapon science, and I was hoping that one, my collection of weapons that I'd made would kind of serve as a portfolio, and two, I'd be able to kind of start to bring some of my expertise as a data engineer, because that's a subdiscipline of software engineering that I practice and have for the last 10 years or more.
Hmm.
I'd be able to bring my expertise as a data engineer into the realm of weapons science. So at the same time I was building weapons, I was also developing, for example, a theoretical framework for semi-automatic weapon tuning called CEF, cyclic energy flow, which posits that a semi-automatic rifle is a kind of a mass flow circuit. And if you know certain things about the energy budget you start out with, you can kind of make inferences about how that weapon will cycle based on some fundamental electrical engineering principles. I designed I designed a system called Drift 360, a dry fire training system. I designed on paper a system or I sketched out on paper, I should say, a system to do automated quality assurance of brass ammunition, brass cartridges, because there's a lot of guys my age or older who are interested in what's called hand loading. And with hand loading, you can make your own ammunition. But a lot of guys my age, including me, your eyesight starts to fade because an ammunition cartridge is kind of like a bomb going off near your face when it's
Hmm.
in a rifle, for example. The idea is that you should be able to use like a cheap laser scanner and an Arduino to make a desktop scanner that can scan your brass for you and detect defects that the naked eye could not, right? So I was all in on this stuff. It was great. I was planning to, buy some land in New Hampshire, build a gun lab, build a range. And again, I built these rifles for myself. I wasn't talking about weapons. I wasn't posting pictures of weapons online. I wasn't planning or making any plans whatsoever to sell or disperse these weapons
Yeah.
or sell my services. At the time I was rated, I was a member in good standing of the West Side Rifle and Pistol Range, so I'd obviously passed their background check. I was also signed up for Rocket FFL because I wanted to figure out how I could actually, what paperwork I would have to do so that when I moved to New Hampshire, I could actually get my FFL and practice this stuff legitimately for money, right?
Yeah. Right.
And again, it's not just that I have a squeaky clean criminal record. That's true. But it's also true that in my work online as a kind of a politically homeless conservative, I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, I've never done or said anything that would make a reasonable person on the street, a non-2A enthusiast, you see what I'm saying, like a
Hmm.
non-gun guy, I've never done anything that would make a person like that think this guy shouldn't be around weapons. See
Okay.
what I'm saying? Like, I'm not
Right.
talking any crazy mess online. And
Yeah.
by the way, the state should know all this because when they raided me, they seized my phone, haven't returned it. They seized my credit cards, never returned them. They seized my daily driver, my computer, my desktop computer, never returned that. They seized my work laptop. They also subpoenaed my email records. And they cloned my phone. I know they cloned my phone. I got a message when they did. So they know that what they're looking at is not someone who's building an art. I mean, the term arsenal is funny. Like when I read that, I was like, all my friends in Texas are going to be laughing at me. Like, that's an arsenal, please. I was like, with your little tiny, like 8 weapons. That's so, right? It's adorable.
Yeah.
But yeah, they should know all this. And I think they do know all this. The point is that New York State, I believe, is stuck in a kind of an ideological pocket. And so now they're in the position of having to take a law-abiding citizen such as myself and try to do me for 18 years for calmly and quietly in the privacy of my own home exercising my Second Amendment rights. I wasn't carrying weapons around. They broke down my door and ransacked my place and took my weapons and my tools and carted me off to Rikers Island, where I spent a week, right? So this is the kind of the overall picture.
Yeah.
Right? And my bail, actually, if I recall, was $200,000. The continuation may have been something else, but my bail was almost $250,000. My parents had to put their house up to get me out of Rikers. Right?
Okay.
Now, in a city, I have
Yeah.
to say this, where people can beat up on cops on camera and walk, right?
Yeah.
In a city where adjunct professors from Hunter College can chase a cameraman and an adjunct professor can chase a cameraman down the street in the Bronx with a deadly weapon and walk, right? In a city where 2 people can throw a lit Molotov cocktail into a parked police unit, okay, and get a year apiece. New York State is now trying to look you in the eye and everyone else in the eye and say, yeah, this guy is so dangerous that we have to set a very high bail for him and we have to put him away for 18 years. And when they offered me the plea deal, right, they said 8 years instead of 18, I turned them down flat, okay? I am not a hard case. I don't want to go to prison, okay?
Right.
But I'm very sorry. I'm an American citizen, first of all, okay? The Second Amendment applies to me, okay? I'm a Black American who knows his history. So-called gun control is the quintessential, the prototypical form of systemic racism. They don't like to talk about that. They don't like to talk about that. They don't like to talk about what the very first gun control laws in this country were enacted in order to do, and that was to keep weapons out of the hands of freed Black men. You see? Mm-hmm. So it rubs me very much the wrong way, okay, that these people, on the one hand, I'm talking about Democrats and progressives in general, want to say that, for example, everything is racist. Math is racist. Precision is racist. Punctuality is racist, but not gun control. And it also rubs me the wrong way that they can say they can profess to be concerned for my health and safety. They can profess that murderous white people are waiting behind trees and bushes to jump out and lynch me from a traffic light, but they're willing to violate the Constitution and fly in the face of the Supreme Court to disarm me. So, you know something? Like, take your plea deal and pound sand. Like if I'm going to go to prison, I'm going to run my mouth about it. But you have to make the case that what you're doing is right, because what you're doing is wrong. I'm a first-class citizen, not a second-class citizen.